A huge thanks to 4Play's Unverified Ad Awards for sponsoring this video. They're having a contest to see who can make the best ad for a $10,000 cash prize. And this video is how I'd win that contest. The truth is that there is a systematic way to making ad creative that converts. Many people are gonna have you believe that it's a game of luck or that you have to test tons and tons of creatives to have a clue about what works for your brand. Personally, I think that this thinking creates lazy advertisers and creatives. So in this video, I'm gonna show you my repeatable process for making ad creative that converts. And I'm actually gonna show you some of the ad creative that I made myself for a brand going through this exact process. Before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about the Unverified Ad Awards. Again, this is a contest where you can make an ad creative for a $10,000 cash prize. There are gonna be several different categories that you can submit to as well, but you have to submit by August 15th to be considered. And I will be one of the judges, so if you wanna impress me, be sure to go through this process. And again, this process, this entire video, is how I'd win that contest. So let's dive in. So at a bird's eye view, this is what the creative process should look like if you want to make ad creative that converts. And I boiled it down to a 6-step process. Step number 1 is research. Candidly, if you want to have a shot in hell at making ad creative that converts, you're going to have to conduct a lot of research on your customers, your competitors, and the products that you're servicing. And from that research, you should have tons of great ideas on the ad creative that you think is going to convert the best for your brand, which is going to bring you to the road mapping process. Now, I like to look at road mapping all as prioritization. And the way that I like to prioritize which ad creatives we're going to act on next, it's a confluence of time and performance. Once we've road mapped out our creatives, then we're going to be sending them into briefing and post-production. This is pretty self-explanatory. Here's where your graphic designers, your illustrators, your video editors are actually going to be executing your creative, which is then going to bring you to the QA process. I'm also going to be showing you a checklist that I have for going through the QA process with the brands I work with. And then once everything is QA'd, you are actually launching it in those ad accounts and then analyzing those creatives after a few days, weeks, months of performance. And then that's going to bring you right back to research. Research is not a one and done process. You should not just be doing research during onboarding. I hear this a lot. So if you're doing that, one thing, that's a big thing to change. Now let's dive back into research, right? The great thing about the overall creative process is that your next top performing ad is going to probably show up at the research portion. And I know everyone's eyes always glaze over when I say, hey, you have to conduct research to make ad creative that converts. But it's true. When we look at some of the advertising greats of our time, like David Ogilvy and Claude Hopkins, they would sometimes lock themselves away for days at a time to make the ad creative that ended up performing well and turned them into the advertising superstars that they are today. It's funny, they actually considered themselves to be more researchers than advertisers at some point. So when I think of research, there are really 5 big bullet points that I want to hit on. I want to take a look at past performance. So what types of top performers have we had? What types of big swings did we take that didn't really perform as well? Things like that. I also want to take a look at competitor research. I want to take a look at customer feedback. So what have our customers actually had to say about our products and brand? And then I'd like to conduct a reputation analysis. So what does the press think? What do people on Reddit think? What is the overall feeling and mood towards our brand? And this is going to include some people who are customers, but also some people who aren't customers. And we want to really lean into what they're skeptical about or what types of pain points they have that we might possibly be able to solve for them. And then of course, there's going to be your product and your customer research. Yes, in theory, all of those things are different. I often find that sometimes people just stop at the competitor portion of their research, and honestly, that is not enough in 2024. But I do want to dig into the competitor analysis because 4Play actually launched a new product called Spyder 2 that has changed the game for me for this quite a bit. So let's first select a brand for this. I decided that I wanted to make ads for the brand Mott & Bow. They're a brand that I really admire, their ad creative and their ad testing strategy. But another reason why I wanted to choose them is a lot of times I see in the comments you guys are asking about brands that aren't necessarily problem solution oriented. And I think that apparel is an industry that often doesn't look inherently problem solution oriented. And it's really a great place for you to learn how to lean into core human desires when formulating the messaging in your ad creative. So let's go ahead and jump into 4Play and test drive this thing. And immediately I'm going to go ahead and sort by longest running. But let's take a lay of the land a little bit. first thing that I love looking at is, number one, how many ads are running. And if you've been in this game long enough and you compare enough brands, and you can even compare a brand that you're working on, you can begin to get an idea of what type of budget these brands are potentially working with, which is really cool. And I like seeing the breakdown between videos, images, and carousels. And then we're also able to see the distribution of those between the different landing pages, which is also going to highlight for you, okay, what are the products and customer avatars that they're potentially spending the most on. So here you can see, oh, okay, I see the beginning of what is maybe women. So potentially they are actually spending the most on their women's jeans at this time, which is really interesting. Then men's tees and so on and so forth. Now, one of my favorite new things that they have right here is the top performing hook section. So you can actually pop in here and see the top performing hooks that have been running the longest. Now, if you think that's cool, we are not done here. So let's go ahead, go back. You can also take a look at creative tests and potentially see, hey, what types of creative tests were they running by when they actually launched specific creatives. And you can also see when a specific winner is identified based on that test, which is another really cool feature. So this one, for instance, you can see, okay, out of all the statics that they released that day, this specific one is the one that has stayed on and was potentially a winner. The cool thing about the hooks too is that you can actually export them into a CSV and help run it through a GPT so that you can pull out the types of sentiments and the types of strategies and pain points and problem solution angles that they're really doubling down on. The last feature I'll show you in here, landing pages. Now, what I think is really cool, you can toggle between mobile, desktop, but since we're able to see, hey, this is where the highest portion of spend is going, we can begin to assume, okay, what type of messaging points have they really extracted as a learning? So for Mott & Bow here, we can see, okay, this travel angle and the specificity in the amount of time that they were on this plane is really, really working for them. This is actually something I've seen them do for years now. And this is a really good opportunity for you to think, okay, what types of trends am I seeing? What can I potentially take away from that as an advertiser? Or even if you're, you can do this obviously for looking at your competitors, but you can also do it when, looking at your own brand or as an agency, working at the brand for you're getting ready to work with. The final thing that I'll show you too is this timeline section. So you can actually see a timeline of how long specific creatives have been running. And here you can actually look for things that have been running the longest. So if we're starting to see something that's, oh, it's been running for 94 days, 89 days, 185 days, these are things that we really want to double click on because it's probably telling us that, hey, this is something that they've learned is working for them and has been working for them for a while. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to be compiling customer feedback. So this is going to be in the form of reviews, ad comments, anyone who has actually purchased the product to get their feedback on it. Now, what I like to do is I like to create a document like this where I can go through ad comments and website reviews and Amazon reviews of past customers and pull out the reviews that I feel like have a little something special to them. Maybe they have a golden nugget review, or maybe I think they just give a lot of great information and I'm just going to be putting them there. And the idea here is that I'm going to really compile as much of these as possible for a specific product, and then I'm going to be putting them through ChatGPT where I can then ask it to analyze the pain points, the triggers, the golden nuggets, and the overall sentiment so that I can walk away with a really good idea of, okay, what is the customer experience of this brand and of this specific product? And then from there, I'm going to be going more in depth on a reputation analysis. And sometimes I'm going to be able to find things in press or in other types of blogger reviews that I can go ahead and put into this section, but a lot of times I'm just gonna find random thoughts, right? So I often like to create another little sheet here where as I'm going through and conducting this research, I'm go ahead and I'm starting to formulate some of my ideas that I have that I'm extracting. So as I was going through the competitor research, right, or the past performance research for Mott & Bow, I kept on seeing how important it was for, people to feel like that their butt looked a lot bigger in these jeans. So I was thinking, okay, maybe there are different ways that we can showcase this, right? So I started putting down some other thoughts and ideas that I had here. Reddit is going to be a huge thing for this, as well as looking at what influencers are just saying in general about the industry or about the product. And something that I found here that was really interesting is there's a lot of commentary on skinny jeans in general, but when I went to Mott & Bow's website, that's really all that they had for women. And that kind of gave me the spark of an idea like, okay, they're not super modern in that they are having baggy jeans or wide leg jeans, which is currently trending upwards through my Google Trend research. So maybe there's a way that we can poke into that idea a little bit more so that we can really stand out to people who are like, forget you, I still really want my skinny jeans. More on that in a bit. So moving on from the reputation analysis, this is where we're gonna make sure to hit on our product research and our customer research. Now, something that I was thinking about while going through this research is, as advertisers, I feel like a lot of times the research that we do is, okay, we're gonna look up, what's going on in paid social. We're gonna look at what the top people are saying on Twitter and like our favorite YouTuber. But it's funny, like we do all that for paid social, but we don't do that as much for the specific products. So when I was actually doing research for Mott & Bow, I was going ahead and listening to a lot of YouTube videos and conducting, research by listening to podcasts and going into different newsletters for people who are really denim fanatics and passionate about jeans. Okay, so I went through this process. I conducted all this different types of research for Mott & Bow to make a top performing ad creative for them. And these were the things that ended up rising to the top for me. And number one was, what do women want to feel when they find that perfect jean? And specifically, I found this quote that was in this newsletter Substack for denim fanatics called Jane on Jeans. And she said this: "These jeans get noticed by my husband, by the vintage seller I visited last week, by my hip dad friend Matt, who sees me almost every day and in every jean I ever wear at school drop-off. Nothing at them screams expensive. They cost $1,200, but that's not what people notice about them or why I love them. I love them because they feel good. They make me happy. Forever the sign of a great jean. And they do more for everything in my wardrobe. They work a little harder so I don't have to. And they were totally worth the wait." Some of the other things that really rose to the top for me for this was, that idea on skinny jeans. Can skinny jeans still be cool? This is something that I saw popping up a lot on TikTok, and the confluence of that between what Mott & Bow is actually offering as a product and the Google Trends of what seems to be actually hip and cool at the moment is not that, but maybe there's a way that we can actually signal to those people like, hey, we're here, we're the number one. And then the other thing that I found that was popping up a lot, and the ChatGPT actually pulled from a lot of the reviews, was that a lot of the people who were buying Mott & Bow jeans and loved them were moms. And when I was conducting Google Trend research, I saw that there was a lot of searches right now for tummy control or mom bod or mom pooch control for jeans. So that made me think, there might be a few angles here to explore. Okay, so now let's talk about roadmap. And this is gonna be all about prioritizing the amazing research that we did and actually deciding what we want to act on. And for a brand in the real world, this is gonna be a confluence again of performance and time. What can you act on the quickest that is most likely to have the biggest impact on performance? Now I do wanna go back to this foreplay contest for a second, right? And we can see that there are multiple different categories we can also apply to. Now for this specific ad creative, I do wanna focus on image ads. Image ads have been a really big focus of mine recently. And we can also see via Spider for Mott & Bow that image ads are pulling a ton of weight for them. So let's think about the image ads that we know work for Mott & Bow, right? Right now, it's a lot of things that have specificity, and specifically that specificity in numbers. So jeans for 90-degree heat, t-shirts for 90-degree heat. I wore these jeans on a 16-hour plane to Japan. And also the statistic ads, which were their longest and most top performing ad creative. So knowing that these are the things that work, and thinking about some of the things that really stood out in our research, how can we take some of those learnings to help inform really net new tests? So based on this knowledge of their top performers and our research, there are two big tests that I'd really like to conduct for Mott & Bow. And it's gonna be this idea around the skinny jean, and if the skinny jean is still cool, and moms, and this idea of the mom pooch. The runner-up was this idea around, we studied like 10,000 butts to make sure that yours look great, but to be honest, I don't really really think that people are going to be as attracted to the amount of research that we did to create this product. I haven't seen that work as well, but if we're really calling out certain target demographics, that's what I've seen work a lot more. So let's go ahead and make this ad, right? Now I use Canva to make this ad. And I think too, if you're gonna be making something for this ad contest that's an image ad, there are so many amazing templates that you can use to make designing this ad creative a whole lot simpler. So I'm gonna make these ads and then I'm gonna come back to you for the QA. So this is me actually working away on some of these ad creatives. I'm gonna have a number of these to test, and I'm gonna be walking you through all of them in just a moment, but I have to put the final touches on some of these. I'm trying to think of a statistic for skinny jeans, or one that Mott and Val could potentially qualify by doing a survey through their audience. Give me a second on this one. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking for these ads. I have two major tests that I want to execute on. And when I was doing an analysis on like the top performing imagery, it's really showing that that seems to work the best for them. So I really wanted to find new imagery that really highlighted that and looked amazing. I wanted to go ahead and do an iteration for the best skinny jeans for 90 degree heat. I really do think that they're not capitalizing enough on the skinny jeans angle, since that's truly the only thing that they sell. It's kind of amazing. And I also wanted to pull some of the language that I found going through Reddit around the Holy Grail, and even poke fun at like, yeah, the Holy Grail of skinny jeans, even in 2004. And you know, since there is such a discourse on TikTok about how skinny jeans aren't that cool anymore, I wanted to just throw a few iterations in there that poke a little bit at that. I honestly feel like something like this could probably be really good for more of an out-of-home type of advertisement, but I think it's still worth to test on paid social, even though I'm willing to bet something like this is gonna be the winner. Now, the one test that I'm really excited about is really this idea around the mom pooch, or, you know, jeans that are for moms or the postpartum experience especially. So I wanted to come up with a few that were more superlative in nature, like this one. Now, again, borrowing for some of the imagery learnings that we had, I wanted to show the backside here, but I think really because we're talking about this, you know, pooch area, which is more in the front, I also wanted to have some imagery that showed that. So I have this option here as well. And since we saw that so many statistics were really working really well here, this is something that I really wanted to try here as well. And again, Mott and Val can easily get this type of statistic if they survey their audience and conduct their studies on their audience. And honestly, going through their reviews, I think it's something that could be really easy for them to qualify. But we have a few options there. And also I had a lot of testimonials that were really great, more golden nugget style reviews. So I wanted to try testing one of those in there as well. God, what do you think? I'm always kind of nervous to be like, hey, these are ads that I made. And especially since I was like the designer, the strategist, I'm still a little bit like, ugh. By the way, Mott and Val, if you want to use these and test these and let us know if they actually worked, feel free to use them. Just email me. Now, of course, the next part of the process is going to be the QA, right? So as we're going through these, we really want to QA, hey, is this actually going to, you know, perform the best for us? And I have a creative checklist that I have in the performance creative course. And of course, there are the basic things like, is the grammar correct? Are you using the right spelling? But I also like to look at things like performance boosters. And for images specifically, I have a much shorter checklist than when looking at video creative, of course. But one of the first things that I always like to do is look at the image, really look at the image in its entirety and say, okay, where do my eyes go first? So when looking at something like the statistics-based ad, right, I'm making sure that immediately it's at 88%. And what I really like about the design of this ad specifically is you're also looking at that part of the stomach where someone might feel a little bit more insecure. So it's immediately 88%. And then if we're thinking about quadrant design, which is something that Sarah Levinger, one of my really good friends, has talked about a little bit on Twitter recently, we know that they're reading from left to right. So they're probably going 88%, seeing the gene and then going right towards moms. So if we hook them in with that statistics and they're a mom, by the time that they finish the rest of the ads and see Pooch, which I really wanted to highlight, they should be pretty qualified. Now, one of the other things that I like to do too is actually transfer it to the phone and see, okay, what does this actually look like on mobile? And sometimes I even will make a mock-up to see what it'll actually look like on social feed, because obviously it's not gonna show up this big, but it's gonna be pretty similar if it's showing up on Instagram stories. But I'm also gonna wanna create a one-by-one experience for this as well. But I think it looks pretty good. Another thing we're gonna wanna consider is, are we using the right visual? Is it competing too much with the messaging? Can you figure out the focal point? Really looking at that quadrant style to make sure you're zeroing in on that, and to actually make sure that your visual isn't too crowded. I think a few of these options might see that visual is a little bit too crowded, but I think for the most part, we're using a really good balance of white space in these ads. And then of course, I always really like to look at the inspiration ad and say, okay, is yours better or worse? And when I actually look at some of the other top performing creatives, image ads specifically from Mott and Bow, I think that they're pretty on par with things that they've created in the past, and even have a little bit more of a different visual identity, which can really help in creating more creative diversity. It's hard to say which ad for sure I would actually submit to this contest. It would probably be that percentage one though, as long as we could make sure that that's actually a qualified statement to make. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm also kind of excited about some of the skinny jeans ones. I think it could just be kind of punchy, but again, I do think that's ultimately gonna be better for something more out of home. And that's it. I cannot wait to see the ad creatives that you guys submit. And for those of you that know me, know this channel, you know what a fanatic I am over deep customer research, over messaging and messaging testing. So I'm really gonna be looking out for creatives that I think really understand the core demographic and use really punchy language to stand out to them, while also keeping in mind, hey, this is ultimately for paid social. Is this something that I really think is gonna move the needle on paid social, not necessarily an out of home or a branding campaign? So, we are looking for something that is gonna have more of that direct response. Again, be sure to submit your ad creative in the link in the description bar before August 15th. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. There's gonna be so many amazing prizes. You could win the grand prize of 10,000 cash USD. We love to see it, but there are also a few other smaller prizes, including an iPad. So can't wait to see what you guys come up with, and I'll see you there. Be sure to let me know in the comments if any of you guys are going to submit. See you next week.